and it is that time of month. It is October wrap-up time. I only read 8 books this month. I'm going through a time of transition in my family. I got a new job. Life is kind of changing. So we went from reading like 17, 18, 19 books to like 8. And it's been like kind of crazy how like my reading time has like slowed way down. And it feels like we're getting back to more of like a normal like pacing. Whereas this summer when I was just kind of Ubering and a lot of it unemployed, I was reading a ton. Now I'm back to like a more normal like reading schedule. So that's really nice. It was also kind of a bland reading month. A lot of like 4s and 4.25 readings, which for me is like kind of like, we've talked about this before. Like, I don't give a lot of 5-star reviews. Like a 5-star book is like a treasure book, like a book that like my brain won't stop thinking about. Like my ADHD has latched onto and won't let go. I give a lot of 4.25s, 4 stars. Those are books that like I really like. And those are like my go-to reads. That means I really like them. That's kind of like that's my like, between 4.5 and 3.5 is where I usually give a book, because I'm not going to read something that I really didn't like. And if it's below a 3.5, I probably didn't like it, or there was something about it that I struggled with. If it's above a 4.5, it's a 4.75 or a 5. That means I absolutely loved it. Like I absolutely think it's like one of the books you must read. So kind of know that my scale is that if it's between a 3.5 and a 4.5, that's a pretty good scale for a book. That means it's a pretty average, pretty great book. If it's above a 4.5 or if it's below a 3.5, that's where most of my books range. So on that note, the first book I read this month was If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. This is a Cinderella retelling with a bachelor twist. And it was super cute. It's rom-com-y. I would even call it YA-esque. There's no spice in this book. So I would definitely call it YA-esque. It was really cute. I love The Bachelor and I love Cinderella, so putting those two things together made this book really fun. And one of the things I loved about this book was the body positivity in this book. The main character is a plus-size character, and she goes on The Bachelor to talk about plus-size positivity, and the main male character in this book falls in love with her because of her body plus size positivity. And I loved that aspect of this book. And I gave this book a 3.75. It was a little bit slow at the start of this book, and there were a couple of moments where it just felt like we repeated a lot of things. But other than that, I really did. And it was a pretty quick read. I read it in like a day and a half. So it was a fun rom-com-y YA sweet book that I would recommend to a lot of people. The next one I read was my first LJ Shin book, and I really enjoyed this book. It's called The Devil Wears Black, and the premise of this book is that the main male character in this book, his name, remind me, is Chase, as Chase is facing a family crisis. And he used to date Maddie, and he never told his family that him and Maddie broke up. And he has to go back to Maddie to elicit Maddie's help in faking out his family into thinking that he and Maddie are still together to help his family through this family crisis. But Maddie is really, really, really brokenhearted by how her and Chase ended. And she still struggles with that and how they deal with that. And oh my gosh, this book was so good. Maddie and Chase have some fantastic banter in this book. Maddie and Chase are so like on point. They're funny. The family crisis that Chase faces is heartbreaking and is just like gut-wrenching, and how Chase is dealing with it is Like, you watch Chase evolve as a character. You watch Maddie evolve as a character as she helps Chase deal with it. I will be reading more LJ Shin because of this book. This book was so well written, in my opinion. It was a page turner. I read this book. I mean, it's not a small book. Maybe it is a small book. It's like, what? It's almost 400 pages. And I read this in like one night. I could not put it down. I started it in the morning on a Saturday and finished it like late Saturday night. I could not put it down. It was so good. It was page turning, character development. I loved this book a lot. And the characters were funny. It was really, really well written. And I gave this book, I think I already said this, but I gave this book a 4.25 star. The next book I wrote, I'll put up here because I read it on my Kindle, was The Long Shot. And this book took my breath away. It deals with domestic abuse, and that was really hard for me. This book took me the longest to read all month. It took me almost a week because of the intensity of this book, and that's why I gave it a 4 star. I think that it really probably deserves higher stars. Just the intensity of it really, really was hard for me. It is I'm going to say it again. It is an intense book with the topic of domestic abuse. It's by Kennedy Ryan, and it follows kind of 3 main characters in this book. They're all basketball stars. It's a basketball book. And just the main female character and her journey through a very, very rough, I have to catch my breath kind of on this one, a really, really rough relationship, and how she comes out of a abusive relationship and into a relationship that is caring and kind. And it is well written, and it does show, but it does show the very, very, very dark side of domestic abuse. Check your trigger warnings hard before you read this book. I went into it a little bit blind, and I was not expecting it. I was looking for a sports romance, and I was like, oh, basketball. And I knew that it dealt with some of that, but I didn't check my trigger warnings as much as I should have before reading this book. And it took me a very long time to finish this book because I kept having to put it down. I kept having to stop and put it down because it would take my breath away at times. Some of the moments in this book that were just, no other word for it other than vile and disgusting, and the way that she writes it is so realistic and so powerful, and it's a good book. Don't get me wrong. We need to talk more about these issues, and we need to talk more about how women are treated in this situation. It was just really, really rough in a way that is almost inspiring, and it is inspiring, and it is powerful to deal with. I was just not prepared. So please be prepared if you're going to read this book, because it is a good book, and it is a book that you should read if you can handle that kind of stuff. I do recommend it. I did give it a 4 star because I was not prepared for it. That's why I gave it a 4 star. I immediately then went into something fluffy because I needed fluffy. And I read, after reading Dark with Long Shot, I went into fluffy. And I went into Wes and Liz's book with Nothing Like the Movies. And I loved Better Than the Movies. I loved Better Than the Movies. And so I knew I would like Nothing Like the Movies. And I did. I did like it. They grew so much from Better Than the Movies to Nothing Like the Movies. They did. They grew as characters. They're in college now. They're grown. They were not I was not prepared for them to break up, and then they had their little break. I was not prepared. I wanted them to be together. I wanted the ending of the book to be so happy in the first book. And then when this book hit me like a freight train, I was like, no. But then to watch Wes woo her in this book made me so happy. It was like giddy kick your feet, happiness in this book the whole time. And to watch Liz fall in love with him over again was like giddy, kick your feet, happy, because it was like a reverse of the first book. And I loved that. In the first book, it was Liz who was like the wooey romantic one. And in this one, it's Wes who's the wooey romantic one. And it was just so fun. And I loved this book. I listened to it on Audible. And the Audible was so fun to listen to and so cute. Because the first one is all from Liz's perspective. This one is from both their perspectives. You get both POVs in this, which is super cute. Because again, in the first one, you only get Liz's perspective. You only get the perspective of what's happening in Liz's head, unless you read some of the like little novellas. I guess they're novellas. The little like POVs that you can get from Liz Painter that are on like her website and stuff. But this has both their POVs in it, so that's really great. I gave this a 4.25 stars. It was so fun. The next one, what did I read next? I read The Bonus next by T.L. Swan. And this book killed me too. I don't know what I was expecting. I love T.L. Swan. I have a whole like stash of T.L. Swan books here. But this book, I don't know what I was expecting from this book. It has one of my least favorite tropes in it, yet I could not put it down. I don't like the pregnancy trope. But dude, this book was good. I listened to it on Audible. I listened to it and I would recommend listening to it. Listen to this book. It deals with Gracie and Gabriel. I had to double check that I had his name right there. And Gabriel's kind of an asshole. And Gracie is Gracie kind of pisses me off too in this book. And it's their journey of, she has a one-night stand with him because she used to be his PA and she was madly in love with him. And then she ends up, shocker, least favorite trope, pregnant. And their journey through dealing with that and what happens with that and how they deal with it and their relationship building and all of that. And I mean, you're going to hate both of them at times in this book. I did. I absolutely despised both of them for decisions that they made in this book. And I wanted to punch both of them at times in this book. I wanted to be like, what the ever-loving heck are you doing? And they're both kind of like dumb in this book at different times. And they're both kind of like, and that's why usually T.L. Swan writes really great female characters. And Gracie is is no exception to this. Gracie is a strong, independent, kick-ass female character. Gracie gets her life together. Gracie has her life together. Gracie doesn't need a man to do things. And that's something I love about T.L. Swan's writing, is that she never writes women who need a man to complete them. Gracie does not need Gabriel to complete her. So, but at the same time, she's madly freaking in love with Gabriel. And there's just moments where she's like, I don't know. This book pissed me off so much. So I only gave it a 4-star because there were moments when it angered me to the point where I wanted to I was listening to it. And if I had the physical copy, I would have thrown the book. But I did go buy the physical copy because I bought it during the Prime Day sales. And so if I had this physical copy, I would have thrown it. We needed a coffee drink there because that's how much this book, the characters both pissed me off. Then the next one that I read was Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I've had this book literally on my TBR for like 250,000 years, it feels like. It's been sitting on my TBR. I have a little shelf over there. If you go back and watch my bookshelf tour, which I will link here, you will see that I like keep a shelf with all my TBRs on it. This book has been on my TBR since like it came out, and I finally got around to, I got some free credits from Audible, and so I finally got around to, again, I listened to it. I love Elsie Silver books. I loved the Chestnut Spring books, so I had high expectations for this one, and it was okay. I don't know, maybe I just wasn't feeling the vibes. I was really expecting high hopes for this because this was my favorite character in the Chestnut Springs books is Willa, and this was Ford, which is Willa's brother, so I had super high hopes for this book, and maybe it was just the fact that it was, you know, Willa's brother, and so my expectations were really high. I liked Rosie. I liked Ford. It wasn't my favorite Elsie Silver book. So, I mean, they were cute. They were fluffy. It was fun. The spice was on point. All's well that ends well, right? It's a great, it's an Elsie Silver book in Canada. You can't go wrong with it. If you're looking for a cute, fluffy read, Wow, Love Is Your Love, I gave this a 3.5. Then I read Viciously Yours, and it is a romance fantasy. I enjoyed it. The thing is that when I read a romance fantasy, when I read a romantasy, I want some world building in it, especially if it's going to be a multiple, like, series book. Like, we're going to get more books from it, and we are going to get more books from this. So I want something that helps me connect to the world. This book was so romance heavy, and don't get me wrong, I loved the romance in this book. Like, I did. Like, the romance was heavy and spicy, and there were some like off the wall things that happen in this book. The premise of this book is that the main male character is the king of one of the fey lands, and she is a human. And she lives in the human land. And then when they turn 13, the fays get a mate whispered into their ear, and then they know who their mate is, but she lives in the human land, and he is not allowed to cross into the human land until he is 25. So he is trying to connect with her, so he writes her letters, and he sends his fated, his fated pet, I can't think of the name of it, his fated pet to watch over her. He sends her letters. He checks in on her all the time, but she has no idea who he is except through the letters that she receives and the gifts that he sends. And so when he's 25, he goes to get her, and then they have like this romance. But it's unhinged at times. Like, he sends her some unhinged gifts. Okay, like, I don't want to spoil it because I want you to read it. It's really it. But the thing is if I'm reading a romantasy, I want that world building. I want to understand the world that they're in. I want to understand why the Fae Kingdom is the way that it is. I want to understand that, like, why the Fays are the way that they are. I want to understand why the humans are the way that they are. I want to understand the connection. Why can't he cross into the human land? Why is that? Like, I want those things, right? This book was super, super romance heavy, and we did not get hardly any world building, but there's three more books coming. And so I don't understand some of the things that I'm supposed to understand, or that I just feel like there were a lot of gaps missing for me. And so I only gave it a 3-star because there were so many gaps missing for me in the world building. If I'm going to read a romantasy, I need those things. I just need them. Not that I didn't like the romance. I loved the romance. If it had been a romance, not like a romance book, I would have given it a much higher rating. But it was a romantasy. I need things to make it feel more in that realm. And then the last book I read, I'll be honest, it took me all month to read because I was reading it little chunks at a time because I was so sad about reading this book, and I did not want to read it in one sitting. I wanted to read it little chunks at a time because I've been reading this series for, I think since April, and I'm still sad that I have to give these characters up. And these characters, I'm gonna cry. These characters have been with me for so long, and I have been with these characters, and I've been through it with these characters, and I have developed a love for these characters so much. I'm crying. And I have seen these characters through so much, and I have such a soft spot for these characters that reading this book over the last month was just so perfect for me. It was so perfect for me. And that's Some Kind of Perfect by Rebecca and Krista Ritchie. And I gave this a 4.75. It was a perfect ending to this whole series right here. The Addicted series. We said goodbye to Lily and Lo. We said goodbye to Rose and Connor, and we said goodbye to Reich and Daisy. And I was not ready to do that. I don't think I'll ever be ready to do that. I don't think I'll ever really get rid of these characters in my heart. I've been with them for, like I said, since April. I've been reading these books. And I've been on quite a journey with these characters, and I've been we've seen them through their lows, we've seen them through their highs, we've seen them have babies, we've seen them get married, we've seen them at their best, we've seen them at their worst. And this book was a compilation of all of that. And I literally read it like a couple chapters at a time every night to get through it, because I was so not ready to put away those characters and not ready for my heart to let go of those characters. Because even though each of the books got different ratings, and I have just loved the development and the sweetness and I feel like these characters have become my friends. I feel like these characters have become people that I really know, and people that I really love, and people that I want to talk to, and people that I know their lives. And this was the hardest one to read this month. This was the hardest one to read this month. And so Some Kind of Perfect is actually, so usually all of the Addicted books are just the different couples. So like we'll just get Rose and Connor's POV, or we'll just get Daisy and Reich's, or we'll just get Lily's, or we'll just get Lo's, or whatever. This is all of them. All of them. That's why it's so chunky monkey. It's like 800 pages. Let's see. Yeah, it's like over 800 pages, I think. Let's look. 805 pages. So it's an investment of your time, but so worth it. So that's all the books that I read this month. We'll see what I do with November. November will be interesting. Again, I started a new job, so we'll see what I read. We are moving into the holiday season, so I know that here soon I'll start picking up some Christmas books to read. And I know here soon that I'll start picking up some of those year-end books. I have some plans to reread some series, to reread the Windsor Brothers series all the way through before the end of the year. I have a plan to reread a couple of other things before the end of the year, just to like, because it's the end of the year. I've met my reading goal already this year. I kind of just want to end the year with end the year with books that I love, end the year with things that I know will make my spirit happy at the end of the year. So we'll see where the end of the year takes us. So until next time, friends, bye-bye.